Hey guys, Man here, and I apologize for missing last week's edition of Modern Meta Breakdown. We're back, no longer sick. As you can hear, I've got pretty much a voice back. Lost a little bit more of it in the evenings, especially Monday when I was doing so much talking for the Invitational Modern Magic Mondays. If you guys haven't checked out the VODs, make sure you head over and check out all that exciting content that we did over Twitch and YouTube.com/Modern Magic Mondays. But we did a voting last week. Some people were trying to decide what we should talk about. I wanted to do a creature-based deck to kind of get right back into things here, and just fitting that I'm wearing a blue shirt for today to kind of go along with the deck that was kind of chosen here. So we're going to talk about Merfolk tonight, guys. I pulled up two different deck lists to talk about, and wanted to start with the more classic, tried and true style of Merfolk that you will see. Mono blue style. There are a couple variants that you can go, blue white, blue green, things like that, but when you think about Merfolk, you think about the mono blue style. It is light on lands, as you can see, 19 lands, and that's about average that you'd expect to see from the deck because it does run Aether Vial, which is one way to help cheat your creatures into play, because you of course put the counters on it, can tap it, take a creature from your hand equal to that converted mana cost, and put it onto the battlefield. The deck does not run creatures above 3 costs, so it's very easy to sit there and cheat stuff into play. Very few 1-drops in the deck though. Curse Catcher is our go-to 1-drop. Merfolk, sweet, works out well. 1/1 gets pumped up by all of our lords. But it also has a bonus counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. So nice little 4 spike on there, Mana Tithe, whatever you want to call it, to just kind of be like, gotcha, I'm going to help be annoying, essentially. So we've got that aspect in there. Turn 1 play should be a Curse Catcher or a Vial. If you have a Vial in your hand, you should always be playing the Vial first. So keep that in mind. Players that have their Vial on 1 could very easily bring this guy in. So if you're swinging in with a 1 toughness guy, just be aware that you could end up losing to that. Harbinger of the Tides, our most recent addition to the deck. The deck had been pretty stagnant, pretty stale, if you will, for the longest time until Origins came out. Now this is a couple of years ago now. Origins been out for a while, but just wanted to make that note for all of you guys sitting at home that maybe hadn't played Merfolk in a while, hadn't been familiar with it, but a great addition to the deck, giving it a little bit more kind of interaction against other decks, because again, the Vial is very key for this card here, because you can Vial it in on 2 instead of having to play the extra cost for it, because you can flash it in for 4 mana, and when he enters the battlefield, you return target tap creature or opponent controls to their hand. So it works out great against attacking creatures, because of course you have to tap them to attack. So I loved being able to use this to interact with some of those Eldrazi decks when they're like, Reality Smasher coming at you for 5, and I'm like, Harbinger of the Tides, see you later. So that's a nice little addition here. We've got Silvergill Adept, another 2-drop here. One that also has an additional cost to cast if you play it from your hand. He does either cost 3 extra or reveal a Merfolk from your hand. Now, if you pay the additional cost, when he enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. It's very easy to just sit there and reveal a Merfolk from your hand. You're like, okay, here's one of my lords. Here's another Silvergill, things like that. Try not to reveal the Harbingers. Most players, like really good ones, will not reveal the Harbingers because that's like their main gotcha card that they have. So that is one of the things. So nice little card advantage. Doesn't have much card draw in it, so Silvergill is actually really important and really key. The deck does run some protection in creature base, which is Kira, the Great Glass Spinner here, that says all of your creatures have the ability that whenever they become targeted by a spell or ability for the first time, just counter that. So it's a nice blanket effect for single target abilities. Does not work against board wipes, So for those out there that have the Wrath of Gods, Damnation, stuff like that, easy way to get rid of all those Merfolks in one foul swoop there. But that is something that they are running in the list. I was running 1-1, one main board, one sideboard, but it is a key card to have in a Merfolk list for those that are sitting here thinking about building it or thinking about playing against it. Something to think about. All right, we've talked about all the other creatures. Let's talk about the pumps. Why are people playing this list? Well, there are basically 3 creatures that pump up your Merfolks. So we've got Merle Retreat, which is the highest cost in there. Besides Kira, there's our other 3 drop here. 2 colors and a blue. Other Merfolk get +1/+1. Does have a nice little extra text you can see whenever you play a Merfolk spell. You can tap or untap target permanent. Counts lands, counts creatures, you know, all that sort of fun stuff. Does not work if you vial in a creature. So they have to be hard casting something, not tapping a vial to bring out a Merfolk. So a little fun fact for all of you guys out there. But that tap ability can be nice because you could be able to dump your hand pretty easily. If you have a vial per se, you could be like, well, I have 2 Merfolks in my hand, not enough mana, even if I untap something, kind of thing. But you can do some interactions with untapping a vial. Sorry, to be able to flash in a Harbinger of the Tides, you know, different little fun interactions. Tap down their blocker or something, so you can do some fun stuff like that. We've got 2 other lords here. Lord of Atlantis, +1/+1 to all the Merfolks, and they have Island Walk. Master of the Pearl Trident, same thing. Other Merfolks get +1/+1, have Island Walk. Both these guys, 2 drop, double blue, 2 2s. Simple and easy. I actually forgot about a creature that has more converted mana cost than 3. So I have to make a note. I started out saying, oh, most of the decks only have a high cap of 3. There's a 4 cost in the deck. Master of Waves. Devotion makes a bunch of tokens, essentially. So your Devotion is, of course, the blue converted mana symbols that you have. So your enchantments count towards it, your creatures count towards it, all of that stuff counts towards it. Master of Wave counts himself. So if you have a Curse Catcher, Lord of Atlantis, and a Master of Waves out, that gives you 4 elementals. So this is a nice addition that a lot of decks will run as a kind of help to finish things off. If the speed aspect of it and just turning guys sideways initially is not getting enough done, and you need just kind of a way to push yourself over the edge, that's the Master of Waves. Master of Waves is often one of the first cards that you see cut sideboard wise to be bringing in certain spells, as well as your kind of different spell interaction that you could go for. Besides your 4 vials, you're going to run Spreading Seas, draw a card off it, your other draw aspect other than Silver Gill there, and you can make a land an island, which gives your guys, of course, Island Walk, just a way to push for some damage. Dismember, Spell Pierces, so removal, help get some kind of protection there. Again, we talked about the land base. Some are running Ghost Cores, some are not. Cavern of Souls, if you need to be having a controlling meta, you need to protect against that. Mutavault is a kind of go-to 3 to 4. I recommend 4 personally, but it depends on where you're going to be going for, what aspect you like. 2/2 creature, but it's a Merfolk, so that means it's benefited from all those lords, all that Island Walk addition that comes out from it. School of Waters, Palace in the Clouds. Basically ways to say, I don't want to get hated out by choke, other sort of spells like that can kind of mess with you. So this kind of just a little bit of safe haven, if you will, so make sure you have some blue mana available to you. Sideboard, Tidebinder Mage, #1 card to be having in your sideboard for a lot of these Merfolk decks, because you want some interaction against some of those red and green spells. Mainly it's like, hey, Goyf can get really big, and Jund and Abzan and stuff like that have a lot of removal to kill off your creatures. Once they're killing off a lot of your other stuff, you can lay this guy down, kind of tap down that. Also can work out double duty against, like, Infect, tapping down a Glistener Elf, Nobles, can do some interactions with Abzan companies, things like that. So he's a pretty sweet one. You'll see 2 to 4 in a lot of sideboards there. Hercules is a must in a Merfolk list. You have to have Hercules. You don't have access for the straight up mono white style. You don't have access to any of those great artifact hate cards that are in green and white. So you need a playset of Hercules Recall, or at least 3. You should not go below that. I don't feel like that's a smart way to play. If you end up playing against Affinity, you end up playing against Lantern Control, you're going to be hosed. So make sure you have those. We see basically some graveyard hate with Relic, because there are some graveyard based strategies out there, kind of better safe than sorry, and then some counter magic. 2 dispels in there, 2 Unified Will, 2 mana, just counter a spell essentially. Pretty sweet, because you should have more creatures than your opponent. So that makes sense. Very straightforward style. I want to show you a second deck real quick that is more controlling the main board than the side. So just a little bit of difference in how you want to build this. So you can see that our spells are pretty similar, but it wanted a little bit of extra pushing power, a little bit extra removal with Vapor Snag here. And I'm personally a fan of the Vapor Snag in the main board. I liked having it. I like having the Spell Pierce and stuff like that side, but that is, my aspect of it. But so this list here had a little bit of difference in the sense that it ran a Tidebinder main board, it ran only 1 Kira, and it ran a Click in the main board. So, again, extra devotion, extra interaction against your opponents kind of thing. And you can be able to try these different interactions here and be like, well, I'm just going to vial it in. I can hardcast it if I need to. It's got evasion. It's a pretty solid card to have in my list. So that is something that you can opt for. But again, these are creature-based strategies. You can see that you don't have to have too many lands. 19-20, solid bet. You've got the vial to cheat in creatures into play. But you should be having quite a lot of creatures. We have 28 in this list, 29 in that list. Just kind of having that extra Kira in the main board is the big draw here. But other sideboard stuff that we can see here. Relics, Tidebinders, cool, makes sense. We saw the Unified Will. There's 3 actually in this one. 2 Dispel. Oh, you can hear I'm starting to lose my voice again, guys. But there's 2 other cards that we're going to talk about. Tech Edge, you see no Ghost Quarters in the main board. He's opting for a little bit more. Safe casting with Cavern of Souls, and does have 4 Mutavaults. Tech Edge, some interaction here. Kill some non-basics. But again, your opponent has to have 4 or more lands in order to kill it off. So, does have a little bit of work against some of those 3-color decks. A little bit of extra hate kind of thing. So that's, nice aspect. Ceremonious Rejection here. Another Aether Vial card that's seeing play in Modern. Counter target color spell. Tron, Affinity, Lantern Control, Eldrazi, all of these colorless spells can now be countered for 1. Doesn't matter if it's a creature, doesn't matter if it's an artifact, an enchantment that's colorless. It's just color. Any card that does not have a color, boom, countered. So that is another way that you can go about it. Base your sideboard again on your meta, how that kind of works out. But those are our main stuff for Merfolk. Main way to play, it's in your face creature based deck. It's a go wide strategy, so you're going to be sitting here and have 3 to 4 creatures out at a time. Very susceptible to those board weights. Anger of the Gods before it gets too much pumps, but Wrath, Damnation, those kind of things, Supreme Verdicts are the big killers for it. Single target removal early works really well. Stuff, Fatal Push, Damnation, Fatal Push, Terminates, things like that work out well. You can go Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt stuff, and that's why the Kira is important to have, because it kind of shuts down some of that. But if you can get enough disruption early on, the deck runs out of gas. You see, it doesn't have very much access to draw spells. Only Spreading Seas and Silvergill add up are the ways to draw extra cards. So if you can survive the onslaught, the initial damage, you can be okay. If you're running islands in your decks, try not to fetch them until you really need to, because that just kind of opens the floodgates for them to just burst you down very quickly. And some really killer hands can get this deck out of hand really quickly. Knowing there's Lord, their Master, and Murrow Regery here. So that's, you know, give or take a good chance that they're going to be having some decent pumped up creatures. So this is our creature-based deck for the week. Merfolk, you know, talking a little bit about it. Again, there are some variants. You can go a little bit more fringe. You can run blue-white. You can run blue-green. The blue-white does have the Wonderwine hubs. Basically... No, sorry guys. Basically, gives you access to Path to Exile and some really sweet sideboard cards. So if you need more specific hate for your sideboard, consider going blue-white. Also, you get fetch lands and other aspects like that. Blue-green gives you access to, again, some sweet green sideboard stuff. But the main draw to going green is Collected Company. So you can try to cheat in more creatures. It costs 4 mana though, so it is slower. You slow yourself down. Kind of change the way the deck works, but it's something to consider there. So those are Merfolk, guys, the main go-to of the deck. There's more creature-based decks that we're going to talk about in the future. More decks, because again, Modern is so diverse. You know, there's so many decks out there that that is the big point of this, is to talk about the decks, let you know what's going on, how you can battle against them, what the strategies people are trying to do, why they might want to play a specific deck, and hopefully educating you guys and maybe learning about new decks that you're like, wow, never knew about this deck. I really want to play this deck now, and trying some new stuff out there. So that's going to do it for another edition of Modern Meta Breakdown. If you like what you see here, guys, hit the subscribe, hit the follows, all that good stuff. Again, I recommend checking out Modern Magic Mondays, live every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, where we do weekly Modern coverage for you guys to enjoy, VODs and all that stuff across YouTube, all those kind of fun stuff. But again, let me know in the description, guys, if there's specific decks that you'd like to hear about as we kind of continue along in the Modern meta. And that's going to do it for us here tonight, guys. I'll see you guys next game.